Hey there, modern math teacher. Can I tell you guys a little something that is uncomfortable to admit? After more than 15 years in the classroom, I'm about to teach something that feels completely new. Not because I've ever or never taught Algebra 2 before. I have, obviously, many, many times, right? It's one of my favorite things to teach. But next year, for the first time ever, I'm going to be teaching both honors and grade level Algebra 2 at the same time. And honestly, that's the first time I've ever taught an honors version of a course. So I'm still trying to figure out what this should look like. Not the curriculum, not the standards, not the content, but the teaching. Like, that's what I want to talk to you guys about today, because I have a feeling I'm not the only teacher who's found themselves asking, like, okay, well, what should actually be different in an honors class? So, hey there, modern math teacher. On today's episode of Poolside PD, I want to talk to you guys about the things that I'm currently thinking about, and what I'm still trying to figure out, and how I'm going to approach honors instruction without simply giving students more work, because I don't think that that's the right answer. So if you're up for it, let's do this. Now, the question that keeps coming back to me is, what do honors students need? And how is that different from a traditional grade level class? And my answer is not just more worksheets, more practice, more homework. And it is definitely not, let's just move faster, okay? Because I don't think that rigor and volume are necessarily the same thing. So before I start talking about like what might change, let's talk about some of the things that are not going to change. My expectations. Obviously, I want all of my students, no matter what class level I teach, I want them thinking deeply. I want them explaining their reasoning. I want them making connections, right? Seeing that real world usefulness and making connections to the content that they've already learned before, and engaging in that productive struggle. So whether that's honors, grade level, whatever class it is that I'm teaching, that part doesn't change. I still want to be that warm demander. I still want that high expectation, the strong support, and the meaningful learning for everyone. But where I think right now, some of the things might look different is in their procedural fluency. And that's really where I'd love your feedback. So this is an interactive episode today. Please give me feedback. Please, if you have taught an honors class, let me know what you're doing differently. Because one thing I've noticed is that some procedural skills I've been willing to de-emphasize in my grade level courses because they weren't skills that they necessarily needed for the class after mine, okay? And I think that those might deserve more attention in the honors class, because if they're in my honors algebra 2, they are more, at our school at least, they're more typically on then they're going to pre-calc and then AP calc, right? Whereas in my grade level algebra 2, most of my students will either take a combination of algebra 3 and personal finance, or they'll go into one of our statistics courses, even AP stats. But the procedures you need to be successful in calculus, right, are different than the ones you need to be successful in algebra 3 or in stats. So that's what I'm thinking about. Things like completing the square, how far and how deep I go with polynomial division, symbolic manipulation, really hammering in like the idea of the inverse and the composition of functions, algebraic fluency, not because procedures are everything, but because a lot of my students are heading towards, like I said, pre-calc, calc, and some STEM pathways, and those skills are becoming increasingly important over there. So that's kind of my thought on some of the content to make sure that I am keeping in mind when I teach my honors class, okay? Another thing I'm thinking about is that honors isn't just faster, right? I'm trying to wrestle with the pacing, because I don't think honors simply means let's do 2 lessons instead of 1 in my block schedule, right? Although honestly, sometimes it's going to have to be that way, especially when the IM curriculum knows where I know there are lessons I'll want to combine. And they give me a great block scheduling pacing. But even then, I'm really thinking more carefully about like transitions, right? One thing I'm considering is using the first lesson's cool down or like exit ticket as a natural stopping point before moving into the second lesson. We tried that in a few of our just grade level algebra 2 classes this year, and it worked really nice as a reset. So that's another thing to think about. And it's a chance to consolidate the learning before continuing on with the next thing, because I don't want faster pacing to come at the expense of understanding, okay? So I'm thinking about the pacing. I'm thinking about some of the content that might need to be more emphasized. And then I'm also thinking a lot about grading, right? Because, gosh, I have so many thoughts on grading, you guys. But historically, honors courses either are weighted differently or they have like different percent categories in their grade book. So they like weight their grade books differently. So I'm really curious about balancing the accountability, the practice, the accuracy, and the mastery, right? So, for example, like should Delta Math still just be completion? They did it. Or should it include accuracy penalties? Which one of those might be more beneficial in this kind of class? Should honors students be held accountable differently? And honestly, guys, I'm still exploring those questions, and that's part of what makes this so exciting. Is not that I'm teaching a new class; it's that I'm teaching a class differently and with a different intention. So it's really kind of cool to think about. But again, I don't have a lot of ideas. So listen, friend, this is Poolside PD. I would love for you to give me some answers. And so I can scroll through and read your answers while I'm sitting poolside, right? That would be fantastic for me. So here's what I'm really trying to do. The more I think about honors instruction, the more I think my goal is not more work, not harder work, but more opportunities to think, right? And more opportunities to take that thinking even deeper, to generalize, to justify, to connect ideas, and to explore the mathematics more deeply, because ultimately that's what mathematicians do. And that's what I want for my students. Okay. So one thing all of my work this year has reminded me to reflect on is that good teaching, there we go, starts with questions. And right now I have a lot of questions, but you know what? I'm okay with that, right? Because I think some of the best professional growth happens when we're willing to admit that I don't have this all figured out yet. And honestly, I'm really excited to see where that question leads. So before we wrap up, I'd love for you to think about, if you teach honors students, what should be different and what should stay the exact same? And if you don't teach honors, think about this. How do you challenge your students without simply giving them more work? That's a question I'm going to be wrestling with all summer, and I would love your answers in the Modern Math Teacher community over on Facebook. Now, remember, if you're trying to think more intentionally and meaningfully about learning experiences, projects, performance tasks, rigorous instructions, I've got that guide that can help. Grab that in the show notes for middle school Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. And don't forget to grab your copy of Math Therapy before we start our July book study. Links to both of those are in the show notes. Until next time, you guys, keep it real.